The gun appeared so fast that nobody in the room had time to breathe. At the head of the long dining table sat the most feared man in the city, a mafia boss whose name was spoken only behind closed doors. Across from him, a desperate father pushed his younger daughter forward like an offering. "She will do whatever you ask." The room watched the terrified girl. Nobody noticed the older sister standing quietly near the wall. Nobody cared about her. Nobody even asked her name. Then the mafia boss slowly stood up. His cold eyes moved past the younger sister, past the father, past everyone, and settled on the forgotten woman. The safety clicked off. The gun rose. Every person in the room froze, because the most dangerous man in the city had just pointed his weapon directly at the one woman everyone believed was powerless, and none of them understood why. The city belonged to many people during the day. Politicians stood in front of cameras and claimed control. Business leaders signed contracts and announced expansions. Police commanders held press conferences and promised order. But when darkness settled over the skyline and office windows became reflections instead of views, another authority quietly took over. Few people knew his face. Everyone knew his influence. Damian Morty never appeared on television. His name rarely appeared in newspapers. Yet entire industries shifted when he made a decision. A shipping company changed ownership because he approved it. A construction project stopped because he disliked the people behind it. A criminal organization disappeared because it crossed a line he had drawn years earlier. The city moved around him like water around stone. Invisible, constant, unquestioned. Tonight, rain covered the streets in silver reflections. High above the city, inside the top floor of a private tower, Damian stood alone beside a wall of glass. The lights below looked distant, small, almost unreal. He watched them without expression. A man entered the room and stopped several feet behind him. The visitor did not speak immediately. Nobody interrupted Damian unless invited. After several seconds, Damian finally spoke. "Report." The man straightened. "There was a problem at the harbor." Damian remained facing the window. "And it has been resolved." "How?" "The responsible group agreed to cooperate." The visitor chose his words carefully. In Damian's world, details mattered. Excuses did not. "What did cooperation cost them?" Damian asked. The man swallowed. "The business." Silence. Then Damian nodded once. "Good." The conversation ended. No celebration, no threats, no unnecessary discussion. The visitor quietly left the room. Damian returned his attention to the city. People often imagined powerful men enjoyed their authority. They imagined luxury, freedom, control. They were wrong. Power did not create peace. It created responsibility. Every choice carried consequences. Every weakness attracted predators. Every relationship became a risk. Trust became the most expensive thing in existence, and Damian trusted almost nobody. A soft knock interrupted the silence. This time it was Victor, one of the few men who had remained beside Damian for more than a decade. Victor entered carrying a folder. "Tomorrow's schedule." Damian accepted it. His eyes moved across the pages. Business meetings, investment reviews, property acquisitions, political negotiations. The legal side of an empire most people never knew existed. Everything appeared normal. That was the point. The strongest walls were the ones nobody noticed. Victor watched him for a moment. "You should get some sleep." Damian closed the folder. "I will." Victor almost smiled. Both men knew it was unlikely. Sleep had become difficult years ago. The older man hesitated before speaking again. "You have not visited her grave this year." The room instantly felt colder. Victor regretted the words the moment they left his mouth. Damian's expression did not change, but something shifted behind his eyes. A door opened somewhere deep inside his memory, a place he rarely allowed himself to visit. "I know," Damian said quietly. Victor lowered his gaze. "I should not have mentioned it." "No," Damian looked back toward the city. "It is fine." But it was not fine, not even close, because some wounds never truly healed. They simply learned how to remain hidden. Years earlier, before the empire reached its current size, Damien had believed in something dangerous. He had believed in loyalty without conditions. He had believed that some people stayed because they cared. He had believed trust could survive temptation. The lesson that followed nearly destroyed him. A woman he once trusted had sold information to his enemies, not because she hated him, not because she feared him, because someone offered her more money. More security, more opportunity. The betrayal cost lives. Good men, loyal men, people who had trusted him. The consequences still followed him, even now, especially now. Since that day, Damien had built invisible walls around every part of his life. People earned access slowly, most never earned it at all. Victor quietly left the room. Again, Damien stood alone. The rain continued falling outside. For a long time, he simply watched it. Then his phone vibrated. One message, nothing more. A brief report from an associate. A businessman was requesting a private meeting. The situation involved debt, family complications, desperation. Normally, Damien would have ignored it. Thousands of people had problems. Their mistakes were not his responsibility, but something about the report caught his attention. Perhaps it was the urgency, perhaps it was instinct. He read the message twice, then placed the phone back on the table. "Arrange the meeting," he said. The room's hidden speaker immediately activated. "Understood." Damien turned away from the window. The city remained behind him, cold lights, dark streets, countless secrets. He walked through the silent penthouse toward his private office. The empire waited, problems waited, decisions waited. That was the reality of power. There was always another meeting, another threat, another sacrifice. What Damien did not know was that the meeting he had just approved would bring someone into his world unlike anyone he had met before. A woman nobody respected. A woman nobody noticed. A woman who would eventually force the most feared man in the city to confront the one thing he could never control, himself. The apartment was already noisy before sunrise. A cabinet door slammed. Someone complained about breakfast. A television played in the background. The sound of rushing footsteps echoed through the hallway. Elena Navarro stood in the kitchen, preparing coffee while keeping an eye on 3 different things at once. The stove, the clock, and the stack of unpaid bills sitting on the corner of the table. She had been awake for nearly 2 hours. Nobody noticed. Nobody ever did. Her father walked into the kitchen first. Without greeting her, he grabbed a cup. "Did you call the electric company?" "Yesterday," Elena replied. "They gave us another week." Her father nodded absent-mindedly, as if the problem had solved itself, as if she had not spent half the afternoon negotiating with strangers to prevent the power from being shut off. He took a sip of coffee. "Good." That was all. No thank you, no appreciation, just good. Elena was used to it. The older she became, the more invisible she seemed, not only to strangers, to her own family, especially to her father. A moment later, Sophia entered the kitchen. Everything changed immediately. Her father's face brightened, his posture straightened, his voice softened. "There she is," Sophia smiled. "Good morning." She kissed her father on the cheek before sitting at the table. Within seconds, his attention belonged entirely to her. Elena quietly placed breakfast in front of both of them. Neither noticed she had not prepared anything for herself. The conversation revolved around Sophia's plans, a social event, a new dress, a friend she planned to meet, nothing important. Yet her father listened as though every word mattered. Elena stood by the sink washing dishes, watching, not with jealousy. That feeling had disappeared years ago. What remained was understanding. She knew her place in the family. Sophia was the daughter people admired, the daughter people remembered, the daughter who entered a room and immediately became the center of attention. Elena was the daughter people called when something needed fixing, the daughter who solved problems. The daughter who quietly carried burdens nobody wanted. One role received affection, the other received responsibility, and responsibility never received applause. Her father finally stood. "I have meetings today." Elena glanced toward him. What kind of meetings? The question slipped out before she could stop herself. For a second, he seemed uncomfortable. Then he looked away. Business. Elena frowned. Her father had not owned a real business in years. Most of his ventures had failed. The remaining ones survived only because she constantly helped organize finances and paperwork. What business? She asked gently. His expression hardened. Do not worry about it. The answer told her everything. Something was wrong. Again, recently strange phone calls had become common. Late-night visitors appeared unexpectedly. Her father spent hours locked inside his room, and every time she asked questions, he became defensive. She knew debt when she saw it. She knew fear as well. And her father was carrying both, but he refused to tell her the truth. As usual, Sophia stood and adjusted her jacket. I should go. Their father smiled immediately. Be careful. I will. He walked her to the door. Elena watched from across the room. The contrast was impossible to miss. When Sophia left, their father looked proud. When Elena left, he usually looked distracted. Years ago, she had asked herself why. Now she no longer bothered. Some questions never received answers. By mid-morning, Elena was at work. A small accounting office occupied the first floor of an aging commercial building downtown. The pay was modest. The hours were long. The responsibilities were endless. Still, she appreciated the stability. Numbers made sense. People often did not. As she entered the office, her manager waved her over. Elena. Yes, client reports, she nodded. I finished them. His eyebrows lifted. Already? They were due today. The manager laughed. I should stop being surprised. Several coworkers smiled. Most respected her, not because she demanded attention, because she earned trust. She arrived early, finished her work, solved problems without complaints. People depended on her. The irony never escaped her. Strangers valued her more than her own family. The thought lingered through the afternoon. By evening, she returned home exhausted. The apartment felt tense. The moment she opened the door, she sensed it. Silence. Heavy silence. The kind that appears after an argument. Her father sat alone at the table. His face looked pale, older, worried. The stack of bills remained where she left them, only now there were more. Several envelopes lay opened beside them. Elena approached slowly. What happened? He avoided eye contact, nothing unusual. What happened? She repeated. Finally, he exhaled. I am handling it. The answer irritated her. You always say that. His jaw tightened. I said I am handling it. Then tell me the truth. For a moment she thought he might. The fear in his eyes was impossible to hide completely. Whatever problems surrounded him had grown larger, far larger, but instead of speaking, he stood abruptly. I have another meeting tomorrow. With who? No one you need to worry about. He walked away, conversation finished. As always, Elena remained at the table, looking at the bills, looking at the empty chair. Listening to the distant sound of her father closing his bedroom door. Something was coming. She could feel it. The same feeling people experienced before a storm. The air changed. The pressure changed. Even silence felt different. Across the city, powerful people were making decisions she knew nothing about. Her father was hiding something. Money was disappearing. Fear was growing. And somehow all of it was becoming connected. What Elena could not possibly know was that her father's next meeting would place her directly in the path of a man whose decisions shaped the city itself. A man feared by criminals, respected by politicians, and trusted by almost nobody. A man who would soon look at her and see something the rest of the world had ignored for years. Value, not beauty, not status, not usefulness. Value, and that single difference would change both of their lives. The phone call came just after midnight. Elena heard her father's bedroom door open, then footsteps, then silence. A few moments later, a low voice drifted through the apartment. Careful, nervous. Unlike anything she had heard from him before, she remained still inside her room. The conversation lasted less than 5 minutes. When it ended, she heard something else. A sound she had not heard from her father in years, praying. The realization unsettled her. Her father was not a religious man, at least not when life was normal. People often remembered God when they were frightened. The next morning confirmed her suspicions. Her father barely touched his breakfast. His hands trembled slightly whenever he reached for something. His attention drifted constantly. Even Sophia noticed. "You look terrible." He forced a smile. "I did not sleep much." Alina watched quietly. The fear had become impossible to hide. Whatever situation surrounded him was no longer a financial inconvenience. It was something much worse. Around noon, he finally spoke. "Both of you need to come with me tonight." Alina looked up immediately. "Where?" "A meeting." "What kind of meeting?" He rubbed his forehead. "A business meeting." Sophia laughed softly. "Why would we need to attend a business meeting?" For several seconds, their father said nothing. The silence itself felt dangerous. Then he looked directly at Sophia. "You just need to be respectful." A strange feeling settled over the room. Alina glanced from her father to her sister. Something was wrong, very wrong, and for the first time she wondered if her father was hiding more than debt. The rest of the day passed slowly. By evening, dark clouds covered the city. Rain threatened but never arrived. The air felt heavy, waiting. Alina stood in her room, fastening the buttons on a simple dark blouse. She had chosen modest clothing, nothing attention-grabbing, nothing formal, just something appropriate for an unexpected meeting. When she stepped into the living room, Sophia was already there. The difference between them was impossible to ignore. Sophia wore an elegant dress. Her makeup was flawless, her hair carefully styled. She looked prepared for a special event, not a business meeting. Alina's stomach tightened. Their father noticed as well. His eyes lingered on Sophia with visible approval. Then he nodded. "Perfect." The word disturbed Alina more than she expected. Perfect for what? Nobody answered. An hour later, a black vehicle stopped outside the apartment building. Not a taxi, not a rideshare. A professional driver stepped out, opened the rear door, said nothing. The entire situation felt orchestrated, controlled. Important. As they entered the vehicle, Alina noticed her father's hands shaking again. The city lights moved past the windows. Nobody spoke during the drive. Even Sophia eventually stopped asking questions. The atmosphere had become too tense. Nearly 40 minutes later, they arrived at a private estate overlooking the river. The property looked less like a residence and more like a fortress. High walls surrounded the grounds. Security cameras monitored every angle. Well-dressed guards stood near entrances. Every detail communicated the same message. Power, money, authority. Alina felt her pulse quicken. Her father swallowed hard. Sophia stared through the window in disbelief. "Who lives here?" No one answered. The driver opened the door. They stepped outside. The estate stood silent against the dark sky. Its size alone was intimidating. A guard approached. He checked their names without greeting them, then motioned toward the entrance. "Follow me." The man led them through massive hallways lined with expensive artwork and polished stone. Nobody rushed. Nobody smiled. Everyone moved with disciplined purpose. The atmosphere felt strangely military, as if every person inside understood invisible rules. Alina noticed something else. Fear, not panic, not anxiety, respectful fear. Even the staff carried it. Whoever controlled this place commanded absolute obedience. The realization sent a chill through her. Finally, they reached a large, private dining room. The doors opened, and the world seemed to stop. Several men in expensive suits occupied different positions around the room. Some sat, some stood. None appeared relaxed. At the far end of a long table sat a single man. He was not speaking, he was not moving, yet every person present seemed aware of him, like gravity, invisible, constant, unavoidable. Damien Morty. Alina did not know his name yet. But she immediately understood something important. The room belonged to him, not because he demanded attention, because attention naturally moved toward him. He sat with perfect calm, dark suit, controlled expression, cold eyes that revealed nothing. The silence surrounding him felt heavier than conversation. Their guide stopped. "Mr. Morty?" Damien lifted his gaze, nothing more. The room instantly became tenser. Their father stepped forward, almost stumbling. "Thank you for seeing me." Damien remained silent. The pause forced the older man to continue. "You know why I am here?" Still silence. Then Damien finally spoke. "Explain it." His voice was calm, measured, almost quiet, yet nobody interrupted. Their father cleared his throat. The debt. Damien nodded once. The debt. Everyone in the room already knew this meeting was not about information, it was about judgment. I can repay it, their father said quickly. I simply need time. One of Damien's associates glanced downward, almost as if he had heard the same promise many times before. Damien folded his hands. Time has already been given. The statement landed like a verdict. Their father's face paled. I understand. No, Damien said calmly, you do not. The room fell silent again. Alina felt tension tightening around every person present. Then something happened, something she would remember for years. Her father reached towards Sophia, guiding her forward, presenting her, like an object, like an offer. Like payment, the horror on Alina's face appeared instantly. Sophia froze, confused, embarrassed, afraid. Their father forced a smile. She is beautiful. Nobody moved, nobody spoke. The meaning became painfully clear. Alina felt sick. Father, he ignored her. She is educated, respectful, kind. Sophia stared at him in disbelief. What are you doing? He continued speaking. Desperation had overcome shame. I know her value. The room grew colder. Even some of Damien's men appeared uncomfortable, because everyone understood exactly what was happening. A desperate man was trying to trade his daughter for mercy. Alina felt anger rising inside her, pure anger, not fear, not embarrassment, anger. Without thinking, she stepped forward. Stop! The word echoed through the room, every head turned. Her father looked shocked. Alina! No! For the first time in years, she refused to stay silent. This is wrong. The room became completely still. And then for the first time since they entered, Damien looked directly at her. Not Sophia, not her father, her. His eyes remained fixed on her face, studying, measuring, searching. The silence stretched. 1 second, 2 seconds, 3, nobody understood why. Then Damien slowly rose from his chair. The atmosphere changed immediately. Several men straightened instinctively, others stepped back. Power moved with him, controlled, effortless, terrifying. And as Damien's gaze remained locked on Alina, a strange expression flickered across his face. Not attraction, not pity, recognition, as though he had just noticed the only honest person in the room. The room remained silent as Damien Morty stood. Nobody moved, nobody dared. Even Alina's father seemed to forget how to breathe. The distance between Damien and the rest of the room suddenly felt enormous, not because of physical space, because of authority. A few moments earlier, everyone had been focused on Sophia. Now all attention had shifted elsewhere, toward the woman who was never supposed to matter, toward Alina. Damien's eyes never left her. The expression on his face remained unreadable. Years of power had taught him how to hide every thought, every emotion, every weakness. Yet something about this woman had interrupted his routine. Most people who entered this room wanted something. Money, protection, influence, forgiveness. They lied before speaking. They performed before thinking. They adjusted themselves according to what they believed he wanted to hear. This woman had done the opposite. She had challenged the situation despite understanding none of the risks. Not because it benefited her, because she believed it was wrong. That difference mattered. Damien finally spoke. Your name? The question surprised everyone, including Alina. Alina. Alina what? Alina Navarro. His gaze remained steady. What do you think is happening here? The question caught her off guard. Her father immediately stepped forward. Mr. Morty, she does not understand. Damien raised one finger, nothing more. The older man instantly fell silent. The gesture was small. The effect was absolute. Damien looked back at Alina. I asked you. The room waited. Alina's pulse raced. She understood enough to know she was standing in dangerous territory. Every instinct told her to remain quiet, to apologize, to disappear. Instead, she answered honestly. I think my father is afraid. Nobody reacted. So do I. A few heads turned. Her father stared at her. Damien remained expressionless. Continue. Alina swallowed. I think he owes you money. Correct. And I think he believes offering my sister will solve that problem. The words sounded even worse spoken aloud. A heavy silence followed. Damien's eyes narrowed slightly, not in anger, in observation. Do you believe it will? No, the answer came immediately. The room grew quieter. If such a thing were possible, Damien slowly approached, not threatening, not aggressive, simply walking, yet every step increased tension. When he stopped, only a few feet separated them. Most people lowered their eyes when standing this close to him. Alina did not. Fear remained in her expression, but she held his gaze. Another detail Damien noticed. Another detail he stored away. Why not? He asked. Because people are not currency. The answer arrived without hesitation. Several men exchanged glances. One of Damien's advisors looked away, almost uncomfortable. Alina continued. My father is desperate. The older man flinched. He is making decisions based on fear. She looked toward Sophia, and she should not have to pay for his mistakes. Sophia stared at her sister, speechless. Nobody had defended her, not their father, not anyone, only Alina. As usual, Damien noticed that too. He turned toward the older man. You brought both daughters. The statement sounded harmless. It was not. Their father immediately nodded. Yes. Why? The question carried weight. The man struggled for an answer. Damien waited. Silence often revealed more than interrogation. Eventually, the truth emerged, because there was nowhere left to hide. Sophia has always been, he began carefully. The hesitation exposed everything. Damien's eyes hardened. Preferred. The older man looked down. Nobody needed clarification. The answer was obvious. For years, one daughter had been valued, the other had been overlooked. The room understood it immediately. Alina wished the floor would open beneath her. Humiliation spread through her chest, not because the truth was new, because strangers now witnessed it. Damien studied her face. Something about her reaction interested him. She looked embarrassed, not angry, not bitter, embarrassed, as if she wanted to protect her father despite everything. An unusual response. Most people carried resentment. This woman carried responsibility. The difference mattered. Damien returned to his seat. The room seemed to exhale collectively. The tension eased slightly, only slightly. He folded his hands, then addressed Sophia directly. Did you know why you were brought here? She shook her head immediately. No. Would you have come if you knew? Another pause, then no. Damien nodded once. No judgment, no criticism, just acknowledgement. He looked toward Alina. And you? She answered honestly. I would have tried to stop it. The statement earned the smallest reaction from him. A nearly invisible nod, yet several men around the table noticed and exchanged cautious glances, because Damien Morty rarely approved of anyone, especially strangers. One of his senior advisors leaned closer. Sir, Damien looked toward him. The man lowered his voice. The debt still exists. A reminder. A practical concern. Business remained business, no matter how unusual the meeting had become. Damien considered the situation. The amount owed was substantial, large enough to ruin an ordinary man, small enough to be insignificant to him. The money itself was not the issue. Character was always character. He shifted his attention back to Alina's father. How much of the debt have you personally attempted to repay? The question landed heavily. The man hesitated, too long. Damien already knew the answer. His investigators had prepared detailed reports before the meeting. He knew where the money went. He knew every failed investment, every poor decision, every attempt to avoid responsibility. This meeting had never been about information, only confirmation. The father finally looked away. Damien's expression cooled. Further confirmation. Then he spoke words nobody expected. Leave. The older man blinked. What? Take your daughters. Confusion spread across the room. Several advisors looked surprised. Even Victor, seated near the far end of the table, remained still. The decision was unexpected. Damien continued. The debt remains. Their father's face fell. But tonight is finished. The man opened his mouth, closed it again, then nodded rapidly. Thank you. The gratitude sounded desperate. Damien ignored it. His attention had already shifted elsewhere. The meeting was over, at least officially. Guards approached, not aggressively, simply signaling the conclusion. Alina turned toward the exit. Relief mixed with confusion. Nothing made sense anymore. She expected threats, demands, punishment. Instead, the most feared man in the city had listened to her. Why, she had no answer. As the three family members approached the doorway, Damien suddenly spoke again. "Elena!" She stopped, slowly turned. Every eye in the room followed. Damien remained seated, calm, unreadable. One question. Her heart tightened. "Yes." His gaze remained fixed on hers. "If the debt disappeared tomorrow. If every burden vanished, if nobody needed anything from you, what would you do?" The question felt strangely personal, not something she expected, not from him. The room waited. Elena thought carefully, then answered, "I would rest." The honesty of the response struck the room harder than anyone expected. No dreams of wealth, no ambitions, no grand plans, just rest. Simple, human, exhausted. For the first time that evening, something changed in Damien's eyes, a brief flicker. Gone almost instantly, but real, because he understood that answer better than anyone, more than money, more than power, more than victory. Rest was the one thing neither of them possessed. Elena left the room moments later. The doors closed behind her. Silence returned. Nobody spoke. Finally, Victor broke it. "You are interested in her." Damien looked toward the empty doorway, his expression unreadable. "No." Victor raised an eyebrow. "Then what is it?" A long pause followed. Damien thought about the answer, about the woman who had entered his world for less than an hour. The woman everyone ignored, the woman who refused to lie, the woman who carried burdens that belonged to others, and the woman who, for reasons he could not yet explain, reminded him that integrity still existed. When he finally spoke, his voice was quiet. "She is the only person who told the truth tonight." The room fell silent once more, because in Damien Morty's world, truth was rarer than loyalty. And far more valuable. The meeting should have ended there. For most people, it would have. A debt had been discussed. A decision had been made. The matter should have disappeared into the endless list of problems crossing Damien Morty's desk every week. Yet 3 days later, he was still thinking about Elena Navarro, not constantly, not obsessively, simply enough to notice. And that alone irritated him. Damien sat inside his private office overlooking the river. Morning sunlight reflected off the water below. A stack of reports waited on his desk. Investment summaries, security briefings, political updates. Millions of dollars moved through his empire every day. Entire companies depended on his decisions, yet among all those documents sat a thin file, a single name typed neatly across the cover. Elena Navarro. Damien stared at it for a moment, then opened it. Victor entered without knocking, one of the few people permitted to do so. His eyes immediately landed on the file. A knowing look crossed his face. "You had her investigated." Damien continued reading. "I investigate everyone. Not personally." That observation was harder to dismiss. Usually Damien delegated such matters. This time he had not. Victor sat across from him. "What did you find?" Damien turned a page. "Nothing." Victor almost laughed. "Nothing. No criminal history." Page. "No financial fraud." Page. "No hidden relationships." Page. "No manipulation." Page. "No lies." Finally, Damien closed the file. Victor leaned back. "And that concerns you?" The statement was correct, because perfect people did not exist. Everyone hid something, everyone compromised somewhere, everyone had a price. Yet Elena's history showed years of sacrifice with little reward. She paid bills she did not create, solved problems she did not cause, accepted responsibilities that belonged to others, and somehow remained honest. Damien found that difficult to understand. Victor watched him carefully, then asked the question neither had spoken aloud. "Who does she remind you of?" The office became very quiet. Outside, boats moved across the river. Inside, old memories stirred. Damien looked toward the window. Years disappeared, and another face appeared in his mind. A woman named Isabella, 20 years earlier, before the empire became what it was today, before fear surrounded his name, before power hardened him. Back then, Damien still believed trust could survive ambition. He had built his organization alongside a small group of loyal people, men and women who shared risk, shared struggle, shared dreams. Isabella had been one of them, smart, calm, patient, someone who understood him before the rest of the world did, someone he trusted completely. For a while, that trust felt justified, until the night everything changed. The memory remained sharp despite the years, a warehouse near the docks. A confidential meeting. Information only a handful of people possessed. Then gunfire, chaos, screaming, blood on concrete. 3 loyal men dead before sunrise, not because enemies were clever, because someone had spoken, someone close, someone trusted. The betrayal shattered more than operations, it shattered certainty. For weeks, Damien searched for answers. When the truth finally emerged, it felt almost absurd. Isabella had sold information, not out of hatred, not because she wanted revenge. Because another organization offered security, money, influence. A future she believed Damien could not provide, she chose opportunity over loyalty. The decision cost lives, including her own, because the people she trusted ultimately viewed her as disposable. The lesson never left him: trust nobody completely, need nobody completely, depend on nobody completely. Those rules helped build an empire. They also built walls. Victor's voice pulled him back to the present. You still blame yourself. Damien remained silent. That was answer enough, because leadership carried a unique burden. When good people died, responsibility never disappeared. It settled permanently inside you, no matter how many years passed. Victor stood. You were not the one who betrayed them. No, Damien's voice remained calm. I was the one who trusted her. Neither man spoke after that. Some wounds resisted comfort. Eventually, Victor left. The office became silent again. Damien looked down at Alina's file. A photograph sat attached to the final page. Nothing glamorous, nothing staged. A simple image taken outside the accounting office where she worked. She carried a folder against her chest. Her expression looked tired, not unhappy, just tired, as though life demanded more from her than it returned. The photograph triggered an unexpected thought. For years, Damien had surrounded himself with people seeking something. Status, protection, power, favors. Everyone arrived carrying an agenda. Alina appeared different. The realization unsettled him, because different often became dangerous. Not to his empire, to himself. Across the city, Alina's week had become increasingly complicated. The meeting at Damien's estate refused to leave her thoughts, not because she admired him, not because she feared him, because she could not understand him. Nothing about the encounter made sense. A man with that level of power should have been arrogant, cruel, impatient. Instead, he had listened, observed. Asked questions nobody else bothered asking, and somehow that felt more unsettling. She sat at her desk reviewing client accounts when her coworker Mia approached. You look distracted. Alina smiled weakly. Long week. Mia leaned against the desk. You need a vacation. Alina laughed softly. With what money? Good point. The conversation drifted elsewhere, but Alina's thoughts returned to the same place. The question Damien had asked before she left: if every burden vanished, what would you do? Nobody had ever asked her that. Most people wanted something from her: help, solutions, sacrifice. Nobody cared what she wanted, not really. The realization lingered long after work ended. That evening she returned home to find another argument underway. Her father and Sophia stood in the living room, both upset, both exhausted. The moment Alina entered, they stopped talking. A familiar reaction, more secrets, more avoidance. She placed her bag down. What happened? Neither answered immediately. Finally, Sophia crossed her arms. He is still dealing with the debt. Alina looked toward her father. How much? Silence. Again, the answer arrived through absence. Enough, far too much. Her father rubbed his face. I am handling it. The phrase instantly frustrated both daughters. Sophia shook her head. No, you are not. For once, Alina agreed. The situation was getting worse, not better, and everyone knew it, yet nobody understood how deeply the problem had already spread. Because while the Navarro family struggled with debt, forces inside Damien's empire were beginning to move. Quietly, carefully. A rival organization had noticed something unusual. A pattern, a detail. The most guarded man in the city had spent time investigating an ordinary woman. For most people, the information meant nothing. For dangerous people, it meant opportunity. And somewhere in the shadows, plans were already being made. Plans that would soon place Alina directly in the center of a conflict she never asked to enter. A conflict connected not only to Damien's future, but also to the ghosts he had spent 20 years trying to bury. The first sign was so small that most people would have ignored it. Damien did not. A shipping report arrived 23 minutes late. For an ordinary company, the delay meant nothing. For Damien Morty's organization, it was unusual. Every system inside his empire operated with precision. Schedules existed for a reason. Procedures existed for a reason. Discipline existed for a reason. When small things changed, larger problems often followed. Damien sat at the head of a conference table inside a private office overlooking the harbor. Several senior associates occupied seats around him. Nobody spoke unless asked. The atmosphere felt professional, controlled, but Damien sensed something beneath the surface. Tension. Uncertainty, fear. The report rested in front of him. He turned one page, then another, then looked up. Who approved this? A man near the middle of the table straightened immediately. I did. Damien studied him. Marco Bellini, reliable, experienced, careful, at least he had been. The report remained open. Why was the shipment rerouted? Marco hesitated, only briefly, but briefly was enough. Fuel costs. Silence. Damien continued watching him. Fuel costs. A reasonable answer. A logical answer. An answer that happened to be false. The room grew noticeably quieter. Several men avoided eye contact. They sensed it too. Damien finally closed the file. Do not do it again. Relief immediately crossed Marco's face. Of course. The meeting continued. Investments, security, contracts, operations. Yet Damien's attention remained partially elsewhere. The answer still bothered him, not because of the shipment, because of the lie. Small lies rarely stayed small. After 2 hours, the meeting ended. Most people left quickly. Victor remained behind. The moment the door closed, he spoke. You knew. Damien nodded. Yes. And? Damien stood and walked toward the window. Cargo ships moved slowly across the water below. Millions of dollars traveled through those routes every month. Someone is testing boundaries. Victor folded his arms. You think it is Marco? I think someone believes I am distracted. The statement hung in the air. Victor immediately understood. Alina, for weeks, Damien's attention had occasionally shifted toward matters outside normal operations. Nothing major, nothing irresponsible, but powerful organizations noticed changes, even subtle ones, especially subtle ones. Predators looked for weakness. The possibility irritated Damien, not because it endangered him, because it endangered stability. His empire survived because people believed he saw everything. The moment that belief weakened, problems multiplied. Victor moved closer. You want him watched? Everyone? The answer came instantly. Victor nodded. No argument, no surprise. Paranoia destroyed leaders. Awareness preserved them, and Damien had survived too long to ignore instinct. Across the city, Alina's life continued exactly as it always had, which was part of the problem. Nothing improved, nothing changed. Her father remained trapped by debt. Bills continued arriving. Responsibilities continued growing. Only now an unfamiliar sense of unease followed her everywhere. It started 3 days earlier. A dark sedan parked across the street from her office. At first, she ignored it. Cities were full of parked vehicles. The next day it appeared again, and again, always nearby, always occupied, never approaching, never leaving, just watching. This morning, the same vehicle waited outside her apartment building. Alina stood at a crosswalk and glanced toward it. The driver sat motionless. Sunglasses, dark clothing. Expression impossible to read. A moment later, traffic moved. When she looked again, the vehicle was gone. The experience left an uncomfortable feeling in her chest. Logic told her she was imagining things. Instinct disagreed. The rest of the workday passed slowly. By evening, she finally pushed the concern aside. Until she reached her apartment building, someone was waiting outside. A man she had never seen before, mid-40s, expensive suit, professional appearance, yet something about him felt wrong. He smiled as she approached. Miss Navarro. Elena stopped. The stranger already knew her name. Yes, his smile remained perfectly polite. I would like to ask a few questions. The request immediately raised alarms. About what? A man named Damien Morty. Her heartbeat quickened. She revealed nothing. At least she hoped she did. I do not know him. The man studied her carefully, as if measuring the response, then nodded. Interesting. The single word carried weight, too much weight. Elena took a step backward. What do you want? The stranger's expression never changed. Only information. I cannot help you. For a moment neither moved, then the man reached into his pocket. Elena stiffened. Instead of a weapon, he produced a business card. He held it out. She did not take it. The smile returned. If you change your mind. The card remained extended. Eventually, she accepted it simply to end the interaction. The stranger nodded once, then walked away. No threats, no regret. Nothing obvious. Yet the encounter left her shaken, because it felt wrong, deliberately wrong. As though the conversation contained hidden meaning she could not understand. She looked down at the card, no company name, no address, only a phone number, nothing else. Elena immediately threw it into a nearby trash container, then entered the building, unaware that someone watched the entire interaction from across the street. 2 hours later, Damien received a phone call. He listened without interruption, without reaction, without speaking. When the call ended, he placed the phone on his desk. Victor watched him. What happened? Damien's eyes darkened. A rival group approached Elena. The room became silent. Victor's expression hardened immediately. How? Observation. The answer angered Damien more than he allowed himself to show. Someone had connected the dots, not accurately, but enough to create risk. That alone was unacceptable. Victor understood the implication. They think she matters. Damien looked toward the window. Rain tapped softly against the glass. They think she is leverage. The distinction mattered. Leverage was weakness. Leverage was pressure. Leverage was vulnerability. Things Damien refused to allow. For years he had protected his empire by removing opportunities before they became threats. Now someone was creating one. Victor waited. He already knew what came next. The question was how far Damien intended to go. Finally, Damien spoke. Increase surveillance. On Elena. On everyone. Victor nodded. The response was expected. Yet something about Damien's tone felt different, more personal, more dangerous. Because this situation touched an old wound. Long ago, enemies had reached him through people he trusted. The consequences still haunted him. He would not allow history to repeat itself. Not for anyone, especially not now. 3 nights later, the first crack became impossible to ignore. Marco Bellini disappeared. No warning, no explanation, no contact. One of Damien's most reliable men simply vanished. The news arrived shortly after midnight. Victor entered Damien's office carrying a file. His expression alone revealed the seriousness. Marco is gone. Damien looked up slowly. Confirmed? Yes. When? 6 hours ago. The office fell silent. Outside, thunder rolled across the city. Damien stood, every instinct inside him awakened simultaneously. The late reports, the lies, the surveillance, the questions about Elena. Now this, separate pieces. One picture, someone was moving against him, carefully, patiently, from inside. And inside threats were always the most dangerous, because walls protected against enemies, not traitors. Damien walked toward the window. Below, the city glowed beneath approaching rain. For years he had controlled every corner of this world. Now shadows were gathering again, familiar shadows, the kind he remembered from long ago, the kind that appeared just before betrayal. Behind him, Victor remained silent, waiting. Finally, Damien spoke. His voice was calm, almost calm enough to be frightening. Find Marco. Victor nodded. And if he is not alone, Damien's gaze never left the city. The answer came without hesitation. Then find everyone. Because somewhere inside his empire, a traitor was already moving. And somewhere else in the city, an ordinary woman had unknowingly become part of the conflict. The collision between those two worlds was no longer approaching. It had already begun. Rain fell steadily across the city. The streets reflected neon lights and passing headlights in long, distorted lines. Elena left the accounting office later than usual. Quarterly reports had kept everyone working overtime. Her shoulders ached. Her eyes felt heavy. All she wanted was to go home, make tea, and forget the growing tension surrounding her life. For a few minutes, she almost succeeded. She walked through the evening crowd, focused only on reaching the bus stop. Then she noticed something. Street had become unusually quiet, not empty, quiet. The kind of silence that made people instinctively look over their shoulders. Alina slowed. A black vehicle sat parked near the curb, the same model she had seen before, maybe the same one, maybe not. Her pulse quickened. She told herself to keep walking, do not panic, do not imagine problems, but the uneasy feeling returned. Stronger this time, she crossed the street. The vehicle remained still. A man stepped out. Then another. Neither rushed. Neither spoke, they simply started walking in her direction. Alina immediately changed course. The men changed course too. The realization hit her instantly. They were following her. Fear surged through her chest. For the first time, the situation no longer felt mysterious. It felt real, very real. She increased her pace. The footsteps behind her did the same. Rain intensified. Cars moved through the intersection ahead. People hurried past with umbrellas. Nobody noticed anything unusual. Nobody noticed her fear. One of the men finally spoke. "Miss Navarro." Alina ignored him. "Miss Navarro." Again, closer, she kept moving. The voice remained calm, almost polite. That frightened her more than shouting would have, because calm men often felt confident. Confident men rarely feared consequences. A hand touched her shoulder. Alina immediately pulled away. "Leave me alone." The man stepped back slightly. "No one wants to hurt you." The statement achieved the opposite effect. Her heart pounded harder. People who said such things often intended harm. The second man approached. "All we need is a conversation." "No, we only have questions." "No." The answer came louder this time. Several pedestrians glanced over. The men noticed, and their patience began disappearing. The first man's expression hardened. "We are trying to be respectful." Alina took another step backward. Rainwater soaked her hair. Her hands trembled, yet she refused to show submission. The man moved forward again, then everything stopped. A black sedan pulled sharply against the curb. Its doors opened immediately. 4 men stepped out, professional, disciplined, focused. Not bodyguards pretending to be dangerous, dangerous men pretending to be ordinary. The atmosphere changed instantly. Both strangers recognized it. Their confidence vanished. One of the newcomers approached Alina. "Miss Navarro." His tone was calm, respectful. "Please step behind us." She stared in confusion. "What, please?" No explanation, no panic, just certainty. The 2 men facing her exchanged uneasy looks. The newcomer turned toward them. "You should leave." The statement sounded simple. Its meaning was not. One of the strangers laughed nervously. "And who are you?" The answer arrived from behind him, a familiar voice. Cold, controlled, dangerously calm. "Someone giving you a chance." Every person present froze. Alina looked toward the street. Damien Morty stood beside the sedan. Rain landed across his dark coat. He did not seem to notice. Neither did the men around him. The entire scene felt unreal. For several seconds, nobody moved. The strangers clearly recognized him. Fear appeared instantly. Genuine fear. The kind people could not fake. Damien approached slowly. No raised voice, no threats, no weapon visible, yet every step increased pressure. One of the strangers attempted a smile. "Mr. Morty?" Damien stopped. His expression revealed nothing. "What organization sent you?" Neither man answered. A mistake. Damien's eyes hardened slightly. "What organization?" The question repeated, still calm, still controlled. The silence lasted 3 seconds. Then one of the strangers spoke. "We are not looking for trouble." "Wrong answer." The words landed heavily. Nobody missed their meaning. The man swallowed. Rain continued falling. Cars continued passing. The city continued moving. Yet inside this small corner of the street, everything revolved around Damien. Authority without effort, power without display. The stranger finally looked away, a sign of surrender. "We were hired." "By who?" No answer. Damien nodded once, as if confirming something already known. Then he looked toward one of his men. "Take their names." The order was simple, no further explanation required. The two strangers immediately understood the situation had become far more serious than expected. One attempted another protest. "Mr. Morty, leave." The word ended the conversation. Within seconds, both men walked away, quickly, without looking back. Alina watched them disappear into the rain, confusion mixed with relief. The entire encounter felt impossible. She turned toward Damien. Neither spoke immediately. For a moment, they simply stood there while rain fell around them. Finally, Alina found her voice. "You followed me." Damien's expression remained unchanged. "No," the answer surprised her. "Then how did you know?" "I knew someone else was." The realization unsettled her. Someone had been watching. For how long? Why? Questions flooded her mind. Damien noticed. "You are safe." The statement should have comforted her. Instead, it irritated her. Safe. Nothing about this situation felt safe. She folded her arms. "People keep saying that." For the first time, a faint reaction crossed his face, almost curiosity. "What do you mean?" "Nobody tells me the truth." Rainwater dripped from her hair. Her frustration finally surfaced. "My father hides things." She took a breath. "Strangers ask questions." Another breath. "Now armed men appear every time something happens." Her eyes locked onto his. "I deserve answers." The street became silent. Damien studied her carefully. Most people would have accepted protection without question. Most people would have hidden behind fear. Alina demanded honesty, even now, especially now. The realization reminded him of someone, not Isabella, someone else. The man he had once been before betrayal reshaped him. A version of himself he barely remembered. Damien finally spoke. "Someone believes they can use you." Alina frowned. "Use me for what?" His answer came immediately. "To reach me." The truth settled heavily between them. For several seconds she said nothing, then she laughed once, a humorless sound. "They have chosen the wrong person." Damien almost asked why. Instead he waited. Alina shook her head. "I have spent my entire life being ignored." Her voice remained steady. "If someone thinks I am important enough to become leverage, they clearly do not know me." The statement carried more pain than she intended. Damien heard it anyway, and something about it bothered him, because she was wrong. She mattered, perhaps more than she understood, perhaps more than he understood. The thought irritated him immediately. Attachment created vulnerability. Vulnerability created consequences. He had learned that lesson long ago. Yet here he was, standing in the rain, personally ensuring an ordinary woman reached home safely. The contradiction was impossible to ignore. Alina looked toward him. "What happens now?" Damien considered the question, then gave the only honest answer available. "The truth." She waited. "So tell me." A long silence followed. Then Damien spoke words very few people ever heard from him. "Someone inside my organization is helping my enemies." Alina's eyes widened. He continued. "And they believe you are useful." The information felt far larger than she expected, far more dangerous. For the first time, she fully understood the scale of the situation. This was not debt, not misunderstandings, not family problems. This was war hidden beneath business suits and polite conversations, a world she had never wanted to enter, and now she stood in the middle of it. Damien noticed fear finally appearing, not panic, reality. He respected that. Then he made a decision, a costly one, a dangerous one. The kind he normally avoided. "You will have protection." Alina immediately shook her head. "No." Several of his men exchanged surprised looks. People rarely refused Damien. She continued, "I do not want bodyguards. They are not optional." The answer arrived instantly. Authority returned to his voice. Cold, final. Alina stared at him, anger meeting certainty. Neither looked away. Eventually she sighed, because she already knew she would lose that argument. The realization frustrated her. It also made her feel strangely secure, a contradiction she did not know how to explain. Damien turned toward the waiting vehicles. The conversation was finished, at least for now. But as he walked away, Alina spoke one final time. "Why?" He stopped without turning. "Why protect me?" Rain tapped against metal and pavement. The city listened in silence. For several seconds, Damien said nothing. Then he answered, not completely, not honestly, but closer to honesty than usual. Because this started with me. He entered the vehicle. The door closed. Moments later, the convoy disappeared into the rain. Alina remained standing alone on the sidewalk, watching the taillights vanish, thinking about everything she had learned, and everything she had not. Across the city, hidden enemies continued moving. Inside Damien's empire, betrayal continued spreading. And for the first time in many years, Damien Morty realized something dangerous. Protecting Alina Navarro was becoming less about responsibility and more about choice, a realization that threatened to change everything. The betrayal revealed itself on a Tuesday morning, not through violence, not through a dramatic confession, through a simple mistake. The kind of mistake people made when they became too confident. Damien sat alone in his private office reviewing security reports when Victor entered carrying a tablet. One look at his face was enough. Something had happened. Victor closed the door behind him. "We found Marco." The room became silent. Damien slowly set his papers aside. "Alive?" "Yes." "Where?" Victor placed the tablet on the desk. "A private warehouse on the east side of the city." Damien looked at the screen, photographs, vehicles, meeting records, surveillance images, and one face, Marco Bellini, a man who had spent nearly 15 years earning Damien's trust, a man who had shared victories, setbacks, and risks. A man who now stood beside people working against the organization. For several seconds, Damien said nothing. The silence felt heavier than anger. Victor knew that silence well, because betrayal rarely produced immediate rage in Damien. It produced disappointment first, a colder emotion, a deeper one. Finally, Damien looked up. "How long?" Victor hesitated. "At least 8 months." The answer landed like a hammer. 8 months. 8 months of lies. 8 months of information leaking from inside the empire. 8 months of someone sitting at his table while secretly serving another master. Damien stood, walked toward the window. The city stretched below, unaware, unchanged, yet something inside him felt painfully familiar. A sensation he had not experienced in years. The old wound, the one Isabella left behind. The one he believed had finally scarred over. Trust someone, get betrayed, build again, repeat. The pattern never seemed to end. Victor remained silent. He understood this was not only about business. It never was, because every betrayal forced Damien to revisit the question he hated most. How did I miss it? After a long pause, Damien finally spoke. "Who else?" Victor exhaled slowly. "There are names." The answer was expected. Traitors rarely worked alone. They survived through networks, protection, shared secrets. Victor handed him another file. Damien opened it. 3 names, then a 4th, then a 5th. Each one worse than the last. People he trusted, people he promoted, people he defended. The realization settled heavily inside him. The threat had never been outside his walls. It had been living inside them, watching, waiting, learning, and now it was moving openly. Across the city, Alina sat at her kitchen table staring at her father. The conversation had lasted nearly an hour. Neither side had enjoyed it. For the first time in her life, she refused to let him avoid difficult questions. "How much do you owe?" Her father looked exhausted. "Enough." "That is not an answer." He rubbed his face. "I am trying." "No," Alina shook her head. "You are hiding." The words hurt him. She could see it, but they were true. Years of avoiding responsibility had finally reached a breaking point. Sophia sat nearby listening quietly. Even she seemed tired of the secrets. Their father lowered his eyes. For a moment he looked much older than his years, smaller too, as though fear had slowly consumed him. Then something unexpected happened. He finally told the truth. Not all of it, but enough. Bad investments, loans, desperate decisions, promises made to dangerous people. The story unfolded piece by piece, each revelation more painful than the last. Alina listened without interruption. When he finished, the room felt strangely empty, because reality often looked less dramatic than imagination, just sad, deeply sad. "You should have told us." Her father nodded slowly. "I know." The admission surprised her. It was the first genuine accountability she had heard from him in years. A small step, but real. For several minutes nobody spoke. Then Sophia quietly asked the question neither daughter wanted answered. What happens now? No one knew, and that uncertainty frightened all of them. Later that evening, Alina received a call, a private number. She almost ignored it, almost. Something told her not to. Hello, Miss Navarro. Victor. She recognized the voice immediately. Her posture straightened. What happened? A pause, then, Mr. Morty would like to see you. Her stomach tight. The wording alone sounded serious. When? Tonight. That answered everything. Something was wrong, very wrong. An hour later, Alina arrived at Damien's estate. The atmosphere felt different immediately. More security, more movement, more tension. Even the staff appeared unsettled. The estate itself remained beautiful, but beauty could not hide pressure, not tonight. A guard escorted her directly to Damien's private office. No dining room, no formal meeting, no audience, just him. The moment she entered, she noticed the difference. Damien stood beside the window, hands behind his back, looking out across the river. He seemed calm, yet something about the stillness felt unnatural, as if enormous effort held everything together. He turned when she entered. Neither smiled, neither pretended. "Thank you for coming." The formality surprised her. "You said it was important." "It is." He motioned toward a chair. She sat. Damien remained standing. For several moments he simply looked at the city, then spoke. "We found the person responsible." Alina frowned. "The one helping your enemies, one of them?" The answer carried weight, more than one. The realization disturbed her. Damien continued. "Someone I trusted." The statement felt personal, painfully personal. And for the first time since meeting him, Alina saw something he normally kept hidden. Fatigue, not physical exhaustion, emotional exhaustion. The kind carried by people who had spent years fighting the same battles. She studied him carefully. "You expected loyalty." A faint smile appeared, not a happy one. "No." His eyes returned to the river. "I hoped for it." The distinction broke her heart a little, because hope required vulnerability. And vulnerability clearly came at a high price in his world. Office became quiet. Eventually, Alina asked the obvious question. "What happens to him?" Damien did not answer immediately, because there was no simple answer. Justice inside his world looked different than justice outside it. Consequences carried different meanings, different costs. Finally, he spoke. He made his choice. The response revealed enough. Alina lowered her gaze. Part of her wanted details. Another part desperately did not. The silence stretched. Then she surprised herself. "You are angry." Damien looked at her. "No, you are." She held his gaze. "But that is not what hurts." The words lingered between them. Damien said nothing, which told her she was right. She continued carefully. "It hurts because you trusted him." For several seconds, neither moved. Then Damien looked away, not denial, confirmation, a rare one. The room felt smaller, more honest. For the first time since they met, neither spoke as mafia boss and outsider, just two people discussing disappointment. Human disappointment, universal disappointment, the kind everyone understood. Eventually, Damien broke the silence. "There is something else." His tone changed, more serious. Alina immediately noticed. "What?" Damien's eyes hardened. "The people behind this are becoming desperate." A chill moved through her. He continued. "They failed to reach me through pressure." Another pause. "They may try again." The meaning became clear instantly. They would come after her, again, this time perhaps more aggressively. The realization settled heavily between them. Alina looked down, then back up. "You should let me leave." Damien frowned. "What? If I am the problem?" "No." The answer arrived instantly, sharp, final, more emotional than anything she had heard from him before. The room fell silent. Both noticed it. The reaction surprised even Damien. He took a slow breath, regaining control, then spoke more calmly. "You are not the problem." The statement carried unusual force. Alina studied him carefully. For the first time, she fully understood something important. This was no longer about obligation, no longer about responsibility. Somewhere along the way, the reasons had changed. Neither of them knew exactly when, neither of them knew exactly how, but they had. And that realization frightened them both, because caring always carried a cost, especially in Damien Morty's world. Outside, the river flowed quietly beneath the city lights. Inside, betrayal had exposed hidden truths. not only within the empire, but within themselves, and soon both would be forced to decide how much those truths were worth.